Hello and welcome back to another Monster Monday, a series where I draw a creature from D&D and I talk about its lore and its history and what it's like to fight in-game as well. Now I like to use your suggestions that you leave for me down in the comments section below of monsters that you'd like to hear about, monsters that you'd like to see me draw, and today's video is no different. Today's topic, Yeenoghu, the Demon Lord, was first suggested by Blaze, the Planeswalker, which I think is that guy from Magic the Gathering? So anyway, if there's a monster that you'd like to see me draw, make sure to leave that in the comment section below and I'll add it to my to-draw list. And this list is something that I give to my patrons over on Patreon, who then get a chance to vote on which ones of those monsters they see next, which ones I do in a month. So they voted for today's video. So if, like them, you'd like the chance to vote on which monsters you see from me, if you'd like to pick which monsters I do in what order, there's something coming up in your campaign that's particularly relevant, or you just have a particular favourite monster, I'd urge you to head over to Patreon, because backers at every single level, whether you support the channel with $1 or anything above that, get a chance to vote for which monsters I do in which order. And although that support is super helpful, and allows me to keep making videos for you guys, you're under no obligation to do that. Please don't feel pressured into doing that if that's something that you can't afford or you just don't want to. I hope you enjoyed today's video all the same. Speaking of, I think we should get started. So Yeenoghu is the demon prince of butchery, a dark blood god who is said to resemble some bestial 14-foot hyena demon wielding an iconic triple-headed flail forged from the bones and wrapped in the leather of the skin of a fallen god. Yeenoghu is the father of all Gnolls, the destroyer, the beast of butchery, and the ruler of ruin. Yeenoghu first appeared in 1st edition's Monster Manual in 1977, but joins 5th edition through Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes. This abhorrent creature is the Demon Lord of Slaughter, a cannibalistic, malicious deity of blood, viciousness, and barbarity. This beast is a blood frenzy made manifest, the blood of a senseless battlefield congealed into a malignant form, and worshipped by all those who value senseless violence. But this beast's rage and addiction to suffering is so great that when Yeenoghu roamed the prime material plane, the place where our adventures tend to take place, it carved a path of absolute destruction so vast that beasts from miles around were drawn to pick from the carrion left behind in its wake. Unbeknown to these beasts, Yeenoghu's vile malice is so potent that the mere contact with one of the corpses from this creature's victims caused those beasts that fed on these corpses to become warped into Yeenoghu's foul image, creating the species known as Gnolls. These beasts are Yeenoghu's primary worshippers, the hyena men of D&D. Since this time, Yeenoghu has been banished on multiple occasions to its own personal region of the plane known as the Abyss, which Yeenoghu calls the Death Dells. The Tome of Foes describes the Death Dells as follows. They say its barren hills and ravines serve as one great hunting ground, where he, Yeenoghu, pursues captured mortals in a cruel game. Yeenoghu's lair is a place of blood and death, populated by gnolls, hyenas, and ghouls, and there are few structures or signs of civilization in its lair of the Abyss. Now, this horrifying reality tends to bleed into the prime material plane if Yeenoghu spends too long in the places of the real. We know that wherever Yeenoghu dwells for too long, these following things happen. Within 1 mile of this creature's lair, large iron spikes grow out of the ground and stone surfaces, which Yeenoghu uses to impale the bodies of slain enemies. Very Blad the Impaler. Predatory beasts within 6 miles of the lair become unusually savage, killing far more than they need to for food, and these carcasses are left to rot in unnatural displays of wasteful slaughter. We're also told that within this region, if a humanoid spends at least 1 hour within 1 mile of the lair, that creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw, or they could potentially descend into madness. Rather than the traditional rules for madness that are outlined in the Dungeon Master's Guide, as with most of the Demon Lords, Yeenoghu has his own particular brand of insanity. Sometimes the mere sight of this creature can drive someone to madness, so if someone goes mad as a result of witnessing this creature, something that it does, or from dwelling within 1 mile of its lair, they have to roll a d100. and they gain one of the following flaws, which simply last until they are cured by some kind of magic. On a 1 to 20 roll, we're told, I get caught up in the flow of anger and try to stoke others around me into forming an angry mob. 21 to 40 results in the player having the following flaw, the flesh of other intelligent creatures is delicious. 41 to 60, I rail against the laws and customs of civilization attempting to return to a more primitive time. 61 to 80, I hunger for the deaths of others and am constantly starting fights in the hope of seeing bloodshed. And if a player rolls 81 to 100, the following flaw happens, I keep trophies from the bodies I have slain, turning them into adornments. Suffice it to say, none of those are really great for parlaying in civilized areas. You might get on with some orcs really well, I guess. But if you're covered in an assortment of ear necklaces, you're going to have a hard time dealing with local law enforcement. But that's not where Yeenoghu's influence ends. While within this region, Yeenoghu gains the following Lair actions if you're foolish enough to engage it in combat, which happens on initiative 20. In addition to its normal regular abilities, it still gets its own turn. Yeenoghu can choose each Gnoll or hyena that Yeenoghu can see can use its reaction to move up to its speed, causing a horde. Until the next time this creature gets a Lair action at initiative 20, all ghouls and hyenas within the lair are enraged, causing them to have advantage on melee weapon attack rolls and causing attack rolls to have advantage against them. You basically turn every single one of your minions into a barbarian. Or alternatively, Yeenoghu can cause an iron spike 5 foot tall and 1 inch in diameter to burst from the ground, possibly the same iron spikes that this creature likes to hang bodies from, bursts out of the ground at a point that Yeenoghu can see within 100 feet of it, and any creature in that space where the spike emerges needs to make a dexterity saving throw. DC 24 dexterity saving throw, by the way. Sorry for spoilers. And on a failed save, the creature takes 6d8 piercing damage and is restrained by being impaled on the spike. A creature can use its action to remove itself, or another creature can do this for it if they can reach, ending the restrained condition, but they do have a big old hole through them. And so this creature hasn't even acted yet, but it still incited others to madness, caused a barbaric rage, and impaled a few people on iron spikes, which is horrifying. And these iron spikes seemed like quite an important thing to Yeenoghu. They're part of its lair. They tend to just kind of grow around this creature's environment and impales people on them. How you know you're within its domain. So when I was coming up for what I think this creature should look like, I wanted to include iron in a serious way. This creature is a hyena deity, a demon as well, and a god of slaughter. And there have been many, many depictions of this creature over its many generations, and I made my Gnolls quite demonic, if you've seen my Gnoll Monster Monday, because they are a product of this creature. They are tainted with its blood, corrupted humanoid hyenas. So I wanted to go a step further with this. What does a god of frenzy look like? What does a blood god look like? And I started off with a hyena's skull, and I thought sort of a dog-like humanoid creature, completely flayed, like utterly skinless, seemed to get the message across pretty quickly that this thing is a god of slaughter. I thought also as well, having no kind of lips or anything to speak of, and having no eyelids, just bulging eyes, and this grin full of teeth just reminded me of a hyena laughing, and I thought that seemed like something very, well, a potent message that this creature would instantly display to people. Maybe that is the sight that drives people mad, hearing this thing gurgle and splutter and laugh uncontrollably. But the iron thing can just summon iron spikes, so like I say, I wanted to make iron as much a part of it as anything else. Perhaps it has control over the metals that it can separate from the blood of its victims. Maybe it slaughters so many things that the iron within blood is something that it can manipulate and turn into these spikes that it grows out of the ground. And as a result, if it has such control, this kind of rough iron, these spikes, slaughtering implements should be a part of this creature. So as well as all the jagged bone growths, all these huge amount of horns, this kind of crown of horns that I came up with for this thing, I felt like having a giant iron lower jaw and some pieces of armor, maybe some floating pieces of jagged metal to indicate that this thing has such a control, there's such a mastery over these iron spikes that it can summon. And I wanted them kind of growing out of the muscle tissue as well to show that they are intrinsically a part of this beast. Yeenoghu can cast spells, but it's not really its kind of MO. It's more about tearing people limb from limb. It just has to be slaughtering things all of the time, something that it inspires in its creations of Gnolls. It doesn't want to waste time thinking about rituals and magic, so anything that makes it a more efficient killing machine, having these daggers for fingers and so on, seemed like a really good fit. But aside from what its lair can simply do for you, what being in its presence can do to you, what is this thing actually like to fight? Well, I don't think it'll surprise anyone to know that it's absolutely horrendous to fight. It's a challenge rating 24 creature. You know, we're getting into demon god territory, demon prince territory, or what have you, whenever we're getting past challenge rating 20 creatures. It's got 20 AC just as natural armor. Again, possibly because of the iron that this thing can produce, or possibly just because it doesn't really care about pain. It just relishes all forms of blood, even its own, so it doesn't really mind if you're trying to hurt it. It's got 23 D12 plus 184 HP, and it can gallop at a horrific 50 feet. It's got a +9 in strength, a +3 in dexterity, +8 in constitution. In fact, its lowest stat is its charisma, which is +2, so this thing is an absolutely horrifying monster. It's resistant to cold, fire and lightning. It's immune to poison and non-magical attacks at all. It's also immune to being charmed or exhausted, to being frightened, because I guess this is the thing that frightens people, and also to being poisoned. It has true sight up to 120 feet, and it knows all languages and is telepathic up to 120 feet. So there's no sneaking up on this thing. You can't turn up in disguise, you can't even be invisible. Yeenoghu, however, can turn invisible. It's a natural spellcaster using charisma. It's not that great at spellcasting, it's not its forte, but if it needs to, it can do the following. It can detect magic, it can dispel magic, cast fear, as I say, it can cast invisibility, and also it can teleport, because what you really want is a 14-foot demon hyena creature with no skin and a massive 3-headed mace teleporting behind you. As with most legendary creatures, Yeenoghu has a legendary resistance, so it can just choose to pass 3 saving throws per day, even if it fails them, and it already has magical resistance, so it has advantage on saving throws against spells or other magical effects, just like most demons. Its weapon and claw attacks all count as magical for the sake of resistances and so on. And it has this move called Rampage. It's not really a move, it's not an action, not something it chooses to do. But I feel with this being a hyena, this should have been called something like the Last Laugh. It says that when Yeenoghu reduces a creature to 0 HP with a melee attack on its turn, which, we'll come up to its melee attacks in just a second, but they're very likely to do this. Yeenoghu can make a bonus action to move up to half of its speed and make a bite attack on somebody else. A reminder that this thing is always thirsting for blood and slaughter and for violence. It doesn't stop to eat people, unlike its cannibalistic worshippers. It's not constantly hungry, which is something I tried to demonstrate by making this thing look like emaciated and not really having any organs where its sort of intestines and things should be. It doesn't need to eat. It just likes killing for the sake of murder. Now, in terms of this thing's attacks, it can either bite things, which is a +16 to hit, reaches 10 feet because this thing is massive, and deals 1d10 +9 piercing damage, which is pretty rough. But where Yeenoghu really shines is through its multi-attack. It can make 3 flail attacks, and if those attacks hit, they cause additional effects, which you can choose, or they can be random, which I think is kind of more fitting of a chaotic demon. But yeah, it gets to make 3 of these attacks every time it makes a multi-attack, because it's a 3-headed mace, 3-headed flail, rather. You know what I mean. Big heavy ball of iron on the end of a chain, which I've chosen to add my own blood god-like flair by having a torrent of blood to be the thing connecting these spheres to the bone of this god that it uses as a flail. Either way, each one of these 3 attacks is a +16 to hit, it reaches 15 feet, because it's on the end of a chain, and they deal 1d12 +9 damage. And then one of the following effects can occur if they cause damage. You can cause this thing to deal an extra 2d12 bludgeoning damage, so a 3d12 +9 bludgeoning damage attack, which is just frightening. You can cause a creature to become paralyzed if they fail a constitution saving throw until the start of your next turn, or I suppose you maybe smack someone in the head with one of these things, causing people to make a wisdom saving throw or be affected by the confusion spell until the start of Yeenoghu's next turn. Additionally, this creature gets legendary actions. Again, it's a legendary creature, of course it gets legendary actions. It gets 3 legendary actions, choosing from one of the options below. And it can only use one of those legendary actions at a time. They occur at the end of another creature's turn, whenever it so fancies. It can charge, so Yeenoghu can move up to its speed. Very useful if something's trying to run away. This 50-foot gallop. You're not going to outrun Yeenoghu unless you're flying. It can swat away, causing Yeenoghu to make a flail attack, and if the attack hits, the target needs to succeed on a strength saving throw, or be pushed 15 feet in a straight line away from Yeenoghu, and if they fail by 5 points or more, then they fall prone as well. Or Savage, which costs 2 actions and allows Yeenoghu to make a bite attack against each creature within 10 feet of him. So perhaps a whole AoE surrounding Yeenoghu gets bitten by this monstrous creature's massive maw. So Yeenoghu is terrifying, but really simple as well. There's no sort of massive surprises in its toolkit. It's not the kind of demon god of madness like the Demogorgon, which I covered a while back. It is a god, a demon prince of slaughter and rampage. It can never feel sated, it just has to keep killing more and more, and inciting others to do the same, and as such, its toolkit is a bunch of horrible, it just vomits damage all over players, and that's really all it wants to do. It just wants to see things die, which it's really, really good at. And perhaps that should be incorporated into how someone might roleplay this creature. We're not told too much about its personality, but this kind of galloping, this ability to passively just charge from player to player once they make someone reach 0 HP, their legendary actions to just sprint from person to person and so on. Perhaps impatience is a huge part of this thing. It inspires an addiction to bloodshed in its followers, so perhaps it innately behaves in this same way, slowly driving itself mad between the times in which it gets to cause slaughter and discord. But yeah, I was surprised that this was a fairly simple one, actually, but I really enjoyed getting to come up with what I think a demon prince of slaughter and decay, the father or mother, the creature that spawned all of the Gnolls, what that might look like. Turns out a flayed demonic hyena person with a load of iron on it, but I really liked it. So I hope you enjoyed today's video as well. I hope you enjoyed this drawing. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a little thumbs up, like this video, maybe favourite it and share it with some communities that you're a part of. We're just a little baby hyena pup ourselves, so anything you can do like that really, really helps this channel to grow and helps to tell YouTube if I'm doing a good job or not. So I really appreciate your help with trying to grow this channel and helping me to make these videos every single week. If you want to support the channel in a more personal way, and you want to have the chance to vote on my Monster Mondays, if you want to get yourself rewards like a copy of all the Monster Monday drawings that I do each month, if you want to have access to live streams where I talk about my adventures, give people tutorials and things like that, or if you want to have a one-on-one chat with me via Skype or something else, we can talk about your characters, world building ideas and tips, I can draw some stuff for you, all that kind of stuff, I'd urge you to head over to Patreon. Where tipping me even the price of a cup of tea really, really helps me to make these videos every single week for you. So thank you so much if you choose to do that, but don't worry if you don't, I'm just glad you are here anyway. Remember to leave your suggestions for monsters that you'd like to see me draw down in the comment section below, because I do keep track of all of them, and hopefully they'll all get done one day if my patrons vote on them. So until next time, I hope you never have to hear the maddening, blood-curdling, manic laughter and giggling of this 14-foot demonic hyena. And until next Monday, happy monster hunting.